Hello. In this presentation, we will be discussing teen birth rates among Latinas in the United States and some of the causes and ways to reduce or even prevent the number of pregnancies among this group. Teen births among Latinas are currently double the national average. 52% of Latinas will get pregnant at least once by the age of 21. Teen birth rates among Latinas, like I said, is double the national average, and even though teen birth rates have been declining rapidly, teen birth rates among Latinas has been declining much slower compared to the other groups. In the United States, Hispanic adolescent females ages 15 to 19 have the highest birth rate. This graph shows the decline, shows how far we've come since the 1990s in getting those birth rates down. However, you can still see that the Hispanic population is still quite high, and it's almost double what the Caucasian birth rate is among teens. So we are making progress, and it looks good, but it just still, we need to get the Hispanic population down a little bit from where they are, because theirs is still quite high. The negative effects of teen births. The negatives involving teen births, there aren't many positives, but one of the biggest impacts of teen pregnancy is that the mother will most likely have to drop out of high school. This, of course, limits opportunity and limits resources, limits ways for her to provide for her family. Once the education stops, it's harder to get back in, and chances are she'll have more children, and it just makes it that much more difficult for her to get an education. Most teen mothers also end up as single parents, which also has limits on their resources, and it makes it harder and more difficult for her to find a job and to raise her family. Because of this lower level of education, I mean, it just leads right into the next slide, which is the cycle of poverty. Currently, almost 24% of Latinos are living in poverty. The graph on this slide, it shows that there's been quite a significant jump from 2007 to 2010 as far as Hispanic children. 36.3% of them are currently living in poverty. Almost 40% of those kids are, and I think a lot of, it's a cycle that's difficult to break. Teens grow up in households that don't put a high emphasis on education. They usually live in neighborhoods that are more so around people of the same low socioeconomic status that they are. Lots of risk behavior among peers and among teens that live in those groups due to low parental involvement, low or high rates of drug and alcohol use. A lot of peer pressure comes along with living in neighborhoods like that. And their peers often can get them to engage in risky behavior, and the risky behavior also includes having sex as a teenager. So it's a difficult cycle to break. It's one of those things that there's no real answer, but I think that the biggest answer is probably education, which we'll get into that eventually. One of the other key pieces of teen pregnancy that I think was one of the common issues is the high emphasis that Latinos place on motherhood. It's a term that they call Marianismo, and basically it just is a high emphasis, a high value placed on motherhood. And in Marianismo, it's basic feminine virtues, purity, morality, the ability to produce life, and it's a very valued trait. Therefore, girls are wanting to get it earlier and earlier so that they can feel valued, and they can feel like they're serving their purpose, and that they're serving this Marianismo, and they're gaining that quality that they desperately try to seek. The next part of teen pregnancy is contraceptive use. Um, there, there's very in one video that I had watched, interviewing teen girls, Hispanic teen girls. Contraceptive use was never discussed by their parents. Nobody ever talked to them about it. Nobody ever told them how to acquire it, how to obtain it. They didn't know how to get it, or how to even find it or use it for that matter. So that's one of the biggest issues, is having that parental involvement and the open communication between the parents and the children. And the other issue is males not taking an active role in birth control. Birth control is primarily left up to the female, and it also, I think, it ties into the fact that males um, take on the machismo. They don't want to be told by their wives or girlfriends what to do, so a girl's not going to ask the male to use the contraceptive. She would rather just not use it and take that burden on herself, rather than try to force him to do something that he doesn't want to do, to take away his manliness, his machismo. So involving them in the role and giving them an opportunity to learn and to understand what the cycle is, and also to engage them and give them the resources that they need to find contraceptives, and to actively use them, and to not be afraid that it's going to make them less of a man. Those are some big issues that I think, but just having the open lines of communication, and I guess both between parents and then also between the male and the female that are about to engage. They need to have those open lines of communication. Um, this next slide, teen pregnancy prevention. We kind of already touched on a couple of things, but I think to hit the point again, more involvement with parents, open communication, just having those lines um, open, and just studies show that teens who have open communication style with their parents are less likely to engage in risky behavior. They have that solid foundation, they have that solid um, background, and they know what's expected of them, and they know what they know that they have someone that they can trust to talk to, and I think that's important. And then again, the more male involvement in contraceptive use, like that's and it goes along with open communication, just talking about those things and making sure that both partners know what's expected of them. Um, the next the final piece of this is probably the biggest. It's promoting education to break the cycle of poverty. Um, Education needs to be a big focus. Girls need to understand that when they drop out of high school, their options and their resources are limited at that point. They need to put off the Marianismo aspect of their culture. They need to see that there are other traits that are valued, and being able to provide for your family is a big one, and being able to break those cycles, that cycle of poverty, is something that needs to be emphasized. Education is a huge piece in breaking the cycle of poverty, and we also need to make sure that we're promoting that among girls, so that they know that they have more to bring to the table than just being a mother, which is very important, but not as a teenager. Um, Thank you for your time.